I never expected a simple afternoon at the park to turn into a nightmare. It all started when my kids' friends posed for a picture and a woman accused them of throwing gang signs. What happened next was a tense and surreal encounter that left me wondering if I would ever be able to forget it. Here's how it all went down. It was a beautiful day at the park. The sun was shining and the birds were singing. I was there with my child, who was playing with a group of other kids. They were all having a good time running around and playing games. I decided to take a break and sat down on a bench nearby to watch them. That's when I noticed the group of kids taking pictures. They were standing together and holding up their hands in a peace sign. It was a cute moment, and I couldn't resist taking a picture of them myself. As I was taking the picture, I noticed a middle-aged woman walking towards them. She looked angry and was shouting something at them. I couldn't quite make out what she was saying, but it was clear that she was upset about something. The kids looked confused and scared. I walked over to see what was going on, and that's when I heard the woman shouting about gang signs. She was accusing the kids of promoting violence and gang activity. I was shocked. The peace sign is a universal symbol of peace and love. How could anyone mistake it for a gang sign? The kids, clearly scared of this woman, tried to reason out with her, but it was clear that the woman was not going to let this go. She continued to yell at the kids, saying that they were doing gang signs and that they were promoting violence. The kids were scared and didn't know what to do. They continued to try explaining that it was just a peace sign, but she wouldn't listen. She continued to berate them, calling them names, and accusing them of being involved in criminal activity. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had heard about people like this woman, but I had never seen one in action before. It was clear that she was completely out of line and that the kids were innocent. I decided to step in and try to reason with her. "Excuse me," I said, approaching her. "I don't think these kids are doing anything wrong. They're just taking pictures." Karen turned to me, her face red with anger. "How dare you defend them?" she shouted. "They're doing gang signs and you know it." I tried to remain calm. "I really don't think that's what's happening here," I said. "It's just a peace sign. They're not hurting anyone." Karen wasn't having it. She started to get more agitated, and I could tell that she was getting ready to call the police. I knew I had to act fast. "Look, why don't we just talk about this calmly?" I said, trying to defuse the situation. "There's no need to involve the police." But Karen wasn't interested in talking. She continued to scream at the kids and me, insisting that they were up to no good and that we were all in cahoots. At this point, I knew that I had to do something. I took out my phone and started to record the altercation. I didn't want Karen to get away with harassing these innocent kids. I wanted to have evidence of what she was doing. "Hey, look," I said, holding up my phone. "I'm recording this. You can't just harass these kids like this." Karen looked at me startled. "You can't do that," she said. "That's illegal." I knew that she was just trying to scare me, but I didn't back down. "It's not illegal to record in public," I said, "and I'm not going to let you harass these kids." Karen continued to yell and scream, and I could tell that her heart was really in it. She insisted that she was right, and that there was no way she was going to lose this argument. Our argument probably shook up the other park-goers, since the authority arrived shortly after, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Finally, someone else would be able to see reason and put a stop to Karen's harassment. Karen, however, seemed unfazed by the arrival of the authority. She continued to insist that the kids were doing gang signs and that I was in cahoots with them. It was clear that she was not going to give up without a fight. The authority listened patiently as Karen continued to rant and rave about the kids' supposed gang activity. I could see the authority growing more and more frustrated with her, but they remained calm and professional. Finally, they turned to me and asked for my side of the story. I explained what had happened, showing them the pictures that the kids had taken and the video of the Karen harassing them afterwards. It was clear that they were just posing for innocent pictures and that there was no gang activity involved. The authority nodded and turned back to Karen. "Ma'am," they said, "it's clear that these kids were just taking pictures. There's no reason to believe that they were doing anything wrong." Karen wasn't happy with this response. She continued to insist that the kids were up to no good and that I was trying to cover it up. The authority, however, wasn't having it. They scolded her for causing a disturbance and wasting their time. "Ma'am," they said, "we have better things to do than deal with baseless accusations. I suggest you leave the park and let these kids enjoy their day." I watched as the authority scolded Karen for harassing the kids. It was clear that she was humiliated and embarrassed, but she still refused to back down. She continued to insist that the kids were doing gang signs and that I was in cahoots with them. It was clear that she wasn't going to back down easily. I knew that I had to do something to get her to leave. I walked over to her and tried to reason with her. "Look," I said, "I think it's time for you to go. These kids are innocent, and you're just causing a scene." Karen turned to me, her face twisted in anger. "You're just trying to cover up for them," she said. I know what they're doing. I shook my head. No, you don't, I said. You're just seeing something that isn't there. These kids are harmless. She started to get more agitated, and I could tell that she was getting ready to do something drastic. That was a direct sign for the officers to step in and take action. They had already been patient with her, but it was clear that she wasn't going to back down. As they moved towards her, she finally stormed off, muttering under her breath about how she was right all along. I breathed a sigh of relief as Karen finally left the park. It had been a tense situation, and I was glad that it was over. My kid and her friend seemed to be okay, although they were still a bit shaken up from the encounter. I went over to them and asked if they were okay. They nodded, but I could tell that they were still a bit scared. Hey, I said, trying to cheer them up. Why don't we take some more pictures? We can make some silly faces this time. The kids smiled, and we spent the next few minutes taking silly pictures. It was a nice moment, and I could tell that the kids were starting to relax. After a while, the other kids started to leave. They thanked me for standing up for them, and I told them that I was just doing what was right. As they walked away, I realized that I had learned an important lesson about standing up for what you believe in. It wasn't always easy, but it was necessary. As for that Karen, I never saw her again. I don't know what happened to her, but I hope that she'd learned a lesson from the encounter. It's important to treat people with respect, even if you don't agree with them. I was really shocked when I read about the incident. It's unfortunate that some people behave so poorly, especially towards children. I hope that the kids involved were able to recover from the experience, and that it didn't have a lasting negative impact on them. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to someone like Karen, so I commend the parent for doing so. The safety and well-being of children should always be a top priority, and it's heartening to see someone taking action to protect them. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend he is financially cut off from me, and I will provide zero help if he buys a pug puppy? I never thought that my career as a veterinary technician would come between me and my boyfriend, but when he insisted on buying a pug puppy despite my professional opinion, I knew we were headed for trouble. Little did I know that this was only the beginning of a wild ride that would test our relationship to its core. Here's how it all went down. So this situation involves me, 28F, and boyfriend, 27M. We have been together for about 2 years and some change. We live together and split all the main bills, but the rest of our paychecks we keep separate and spend how we wish. Typically this works fine, but despite him earning the same, sometimes more than me, he is not great at budgeting. He gets takeout almost every day, buys coffee out every single day, sends his god-awful abusive mom money whenever she asks, etc. And I have had to help him out with money multiple times. But the real issue started when he brought up wanting to buy a pug puppy. Now I work in veterinary medicine, lead veterinary technician at my clinic, and frequently see firsthand the suffering these dogs go through due to bad breeding and even just their breed standard anatomy. Plus, they are prone to so many chronic expensive health issues. And I found over the years that no matter what the other person says, if you work in my field and they get a pet, a lot of the harder care aspects, like medical, will fall on you. And honestly, I find buying a pug at all to be unethical and something I am not okay with. I certainly wouldn't be willing to bring them into my clinic and shoulder the responsibility, which I know would happen. I love my boyfriend, but this is a guy who thought neutering a dog involved removing their penis and even says he knows nothing about animals until I met you. Who's going to have to manage the situation when this dog has chronic allergic dermatitis, otitis, or IVDD, or one of the other million issues they typically end up having? Me, I already know it. I explained all this to him, and he got quite upset with me for completely shutting down what he wants. I told him a small medium dog isn't out of the question, just not a pug or other brachycephalic dog, and not a puppy. They are far too much of a time and effort commitment than either of us can provide, and wouldn't be good for anyone. I don't like to admit that I pulled the, "this is literally my career field, and I know what I'm talking about," when he kept repeating, "well, you don't know that." Because yeah, I kinda do. I am also not proud of this, but I told him if he did get the pug puppy, I would never help him out again with money, and I would give him zero help with the puppy, including bringing them into my clinic as an employee-affiliated pet for at-cost care, cheaper, but by no means free, or medications. He was pretty shocked when I said this and left our apartment to go cool off. I guess he told our mutual friend because they told me via text I was being a jerk about the whole thing and must hate animals. All my coworkers agree with me, but I know they are obviously biased. Am I the jerk? Edit to add, this mutual friend was his best friend before we started dating, and they became my friend also. or at least I thought they were. While what they said is crappy and not okay, I have a hard time believing my boyfriend actually called me that to him. Even when we argue, not often, but it happens, he has never used any language like that or anything even remotely disrespectful. I would not tolerate that. He is immature at times, but never like that. Another edit to address some common things in the comments. My clinic is actually part of a shelter. I talked at length with him about how we could foster one of the dogs from work who was compatible with us and our lifestyle, size, energy, age, cat-friendly, etc. before adopting, and he was not happy with this. He also was not interested in mixes with Pug, who didn't have the extremely short face due to not looking like a pug anymore. That's when I got a little more forceful with my ultimatum. If we got a dog together, then I would be happy to take on the lion's share of things like medical care, because this is a pet we got together, and just makes sense. I got my cat before dating him, so my cat, and have never asked him to shoulder any aspect of her care other than feeding her if I was going to be home late from work or something similar. We have never had an issue like this before, so that's one reason I'm a bit lost on if I was really in the wrong or not. I appreciate all the comments a lot. I'll be in the comments. But I think this addresses the most common inquiries. Clearing up confusion. I am a veterinary technician, not a veterinarian. Think of it as nurse versus doctor. I've been seeing some confusion in the replies. In the comments, what if he rescued a pug or other brachycephalic breed, or opted for a pug mix? Oop. This was brought up, and while it does alleviate the ethical issue of purchasing one, a pug being bought from a breeder versus adopted at a rescue does not change what health issues they will have. Pug mix, he didn't really seem interested. Dogs who were mixed enough to not be extremely brachycephalic were not what he wanted. Edit. I'm unsure why you are being downvoted. This is a valid question. Pugs in shelters or rescues do not sit waiting to be adopted. Most pug rescues have wait lists a mile long. Whenever pugs, even mixed, are up for adoption at the shelter my clinic is part of, the phones ring off the hook, asking about them. And it still does not change that I would end up responsible for their medical care, a big part of why I am not okay with it. I grew up with rescue dogs, one of which I was the main person working with his behavioral rehabilitation, had extreme resource aggression at 8 weeks old, and previously worked at a shelter for 6 years, which specialized in behavior case dogs, and determining their ability to be rehabilitated and released into the community, and been a veterinary technician at my current clinic/shelter for about 5 years. I know I am more experienced with dog care than him, and that doesn't make me better or smarter or anything like that. But when it comes to animal care, that's my area of expertise. He works in a utility company. If we ever needed to figure out an issue in that area, I would listen to him. But animals, especially dogs, that just seems like the most logical way to do it. Judgment, not the jerk. Update. April 28th, 2023. Update. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend he is financially cut off from me and I will provide zero help if he buys a pug puppy? So I didn't dump him yet after we had a long talk. Could we still break up? If I don't see a lasting change from him, yes. But we aren't there yet. And him admitting he messed up is a big part of that. And no, a pug puppy is not happening. Turns out the dog he had as a child, D, was a pug, and was devastated when D died. He never really liked talking about D, and I never pried. He cried a lot once he started talking about D, thought D was always very healthy, so when I was going on about the health issues with pugs, he assumed that it was overblown, and I was just being overly cautious, since D was healthy, and he wanted a dog that looked like him, brought on after his mom had found his old collar. I got a gut feeling, so I kept trying to as kindly as possible ask questions about D, how often they took him to the vet, if he had any photos, etc. Turns out he couldn't remember a single time this dog went to a vet. If a vet never diagnoses an issue, it doesn't exist, right? And once he found some old photos, I pointed out the dog clearly had ocular issues, likely untreated KCS with ulceration, and eventually went blind. Sat in a way that indicated hip issues, even remembered a time that the dog collapsed after playing in the yard, but he got up again a while later, so his mom said he was fine. Once I spelled all this out to him, he looked like someone had slapped him across the face and just said he was so sorry. He was just like all those awful owners I tell him about, etc. He was a kid. He shouldn't have been expected to manage that dog's veterinary care. But now that he's an adult, he needs to look at the situation logically. And I was extremely hurt. He gave zero cares about my professional opinion. I get that enough from owners at work. Don't need it for my boyfriend. He apologized and said he doesn't think he is ready for a dog after all, and when the time comes, he's happy with looking at dogs from the shelter I work at. So, the issue with his friend. I did something I had never done before, asked to see his phone, their messages. The friend got a very one-sided version of events, thinking I unfairly vetoed him, but never used any derogatory language. I showed him what this friend sent me and he was pretty taken aback, told me he would deal with it. If he doesn't, this relationship cannot continue. And money? That was hard. I tried to be gentle, but it feeds into a deeper issue with his mom, not a new issue, and I told him enough is enough. I can't keep supplementing his income because he gives so much to her. Something happens and suddenly he has a big medical bill, car randomly breaks down. Obviously, I would help him. Money for psycho mom? No. Done. Her or me. He chose me. Going no or low contact with her and absolutely no money. Even if she does her manipulative BS. We'll see if he holds to that. If he doesn't, he knows I'm done. Wow, this story is wild. I can't believe the boyfriend was so insistent on getting a pug despite his girlfriend's professional opinion. And then to have the nerve to ask for financial help for the dog? I'm glad she stood her ground. I'm a trans man who has recently moved to a new city and is ready to start dating again. But I'm afraid of how potential partners will react when they find out that I'm transgender. Will they accept me for who I am or reject me? Here's how it all went down. I'm a trans man, meaning that I was born with female genitalia but have transitioned into a man. I have undergone hormone therapy, giving me a deep voice, facial hair, and other masculine physical characteristics, and have had top surgery, a surgery that removes breast tissue and gives me a flat chest. What I'm trying to say here is that no one, not even people that knew me as a kid, are able to tell me apart from biological males. This means I pass as a man well. I'm also a manly man and more or less your typical red-blooded American male. I like fast cars, beer, big cuts of meat, and very feminine women. This I feel is applicable to mention as I'm trying to explain that I'm not looking for a woman that fits in the middle, like a bisexual woman. I'm attracted to very straight women. As a man, it should be obvious as to why I would want to date a woman who solely likes men. I've always been in relationships with women who have gotten to know me as a trans man because I was still in the process of going through my changes, kind of like puberty but in my 20s. Now, however, I have moved to a new city and state, and my previous relationship has ended, and I'm now ready to start getting back into the dating world. I've never been more confident with who I am and what I want in a woman. The problem comes in when I actually start talking to women. My last relationship was very strained because she was unable to come to terms with the way I was born and what I could or could not give her, either sexually or even in terms of being able to give her biological children. As soon as it was made clear to me that she was not going to be able to accept who I am, I ended the relationship. However, this left me a little scared, and I feel it may be impacting my insecurities of dating new women. So, I have never really dated women without them already knowing that I'm a transgender man. I'm concerned that if I tell a woman right away that I'm a trans man, she will run away screaming. But then if I tell her after a few dates, she will feel lied to and find me dishonest or something along those lines. Opening up about my transgender past and identity is very scary and more often leads to rejection than acceptance in the dating world. So I would rather get it out of the way sooner rather than later. So, the problem I constantly face is, how can I approach women in a way that isn't dishonest, but also doesn't send them running? And also, when would it be a good time to lay it all on the line? Since there aren't that many trans men in the world, about 0.25% of the US population, or about 700,000 people, and that is probably a generous estimate. So it is unlikely that any of the women I approach will have experience with transgender people, let alone trans men. Thank you for any insight you can give me. I really appreciate it. A commenter asked why the OP was not open to dating bisexual women. The OP replied, I am personally very turned off by bisexual women. It would be so much easier for me to be able to look at that group of women as potential girlfriends. However, my own feelings get in the way. Not that I haven't tried to date bisexual women. I have many times, and they tend to end badly. However, I have not dated a bisexual woman since my full transition, so it may very well be an entirely different experience. To be honest, every time that I had dated a bisexual woman, I was unnerved by the idea that she would be attracted to parts of me that I found revolting. And in all of the women that I dated, this turned out to be true, and led to the end of the relationship. I understand that beggars can't be choosers, but at the same time, I am at just as much liberty to be picky as any cisgendered man. The OP also said, I'm attracted to very straight women. As a man, it should be obvious as to why I would want to date a woman who solely likes men. The OP gave an update 9 months later. Alright, so my original post was made over 9 months ago. A lot has happened since then, some good stuff and some not so good stuff, but in the end, mostly good stuff. Alright, so how have the last 9 months gone? Well, not too long after I made that post, I kinda got into a friends with benefits situation with an ex-girlfriend of mine from college. We provided each other with a lot of emotional support and had sexual relations whenever I was in town. It was long distance, but she's going to school in my hometown, so I visited frequently. It was mostly a crutch, and it wasn't a very satisfying sexual relationship. I masturbated a lot, as usual. While I was doing the whole friends with benefits thing, until the new year, I was keeping my eye open to possibilities. I started getting out of my shell a lot more, which was a challenge in and of itself, being in a new city and all. I would go out with my friends to breakdancing clubs, burlesque shows, out to see local DJs and bands play, and just out to the bars. Basically, if there was something I wanted to do, or see or experience, I wouldn't hesitate to do/see/experience it. I treated approaching women the same way. If there was a woman that caught my eye, I would approach her, buy her a drink, be charming, and everything, and I usually had a good conversation but didn't feel enough of a connection to pursue it further. This might be because I wasn't ready, or because of my friends with benefits crutch, or because the women just really weren't all that great, who knows? But regardless, nothing came of those adventures. Well, I wouldn't say that nothing came of it. I got really good at just talking to women and ordering drinks and becoming friends with everyone, especially bartenders. Not to mention I got to hang out with some of my friends and do cool stuff, and doing cool stuff is fun. *** relationship #1***. But one of my friends really wanted to set me up with her best friend. I was pretty skeptical about this from the beginning. Basically, I had hung out with this girl a few times at the bar or at a party and small talk was fine, but she didn't seem that, well, deep. Another thing, she mostly dates women, but after my original post, I was more open to the idea of dating bisexual women. So, because this woman was a friend of a friend, she was already privy to the plumbing in my pants, if you follow me. No mystery there. New Year's Eve rolls around and we basically double date with our mutual friend. I kiss her at midnight, get her number, pay her tab, get wasted, dry out, and drive home. We make plans to go on a few dates and I do my lady killer moves and she's just blah. Eventually, we have sex, and the first time it was good, and after that, it was awful. The worst kind of dead fish situation. I'm not sure if she was intimidated or nervous, but she was never open to communication, so it just sucked. I should have listened to my gut to begin with. I honestly don't think she's into guys, and I think she has a misconception about what it would be like dating a trans man. I am not at all some kind of androgynous, embrace my femininity kind of guy. I have all of the best and worst parts of being a man, and I really don't think she was into any of that. But hey, we all have preferences, and I wasn't hers and she wasn't mine. By the time I realized that I was done, it was less than a week before Valentine's Day, so I decided to wait until after to break it off. Big mistake. She got weird and clingy and distant all at the same time, and it was a bad 2 weeks. It's over though, so woo. When I realized that I was consistently dating this woman from NYE, I had told my FWB that I was seeing someone and didn't want either of them to get the wrong idea about the situation, meaning that I ended the FWB thing. But then, once things ended with the NYE woman, I started talking to my FWB again. *** relationship #2***. This whole time, I had an account on OkCupid with nothing in my profile to suggest that I'm a trans man. I opened the account when I was still in college, trying to meet people to hang out with once I moved, but no one ever messaged me, which was frustrating, and no one ever messaged me back, which is even more frustrating. I was only checking it about once a week for fun and getting back into the concerts, bars, and burlesque show routine. But then I got this message from this woman with awesome dimples and a beautiful smile. She actually messaged me about Reddit, of all things, and I later found out that she had searched specifically for Redditors, so thank you Reddit for doing me a favor there. Within 2 days, our brief messages became pages long, and we set up a date, wasting no time. Based on our profiles and messages, it was inevitable that we would click right away, and of course we did. I took her out to a nice dinner, wined and dined her, did all my charming moves and everything. Even though I was very nervous, and so was she, we both had a great time. I kind of got ahead of myself and went for the kiss. I asked her if I could kiss her, she said yes, and I did. I hadn't disclosed yet that I was a trans man. I got back into my car and was basically yelling at myself. I had given myself that one rule. No physical intimacy before disclosure based on my original post, and I broke it. This was the only time I broke that rule, and I wasn't going to let that one mistake ruin the first true connection I had ever felt with a woman. And this would be where I broke it off with my friends with benefits for the second time, though she didn't get the hint, and I had to spell it out for her a week later. I knew I needed to tell her, but I was pretty nervous about the whole thing. I ended up looking at her OkCupid profile again just to check if she had answered the "Would you date a transgender person?" question. Yeah, that question exists, and yeah, she did answer it. She had said no. Well, darn. But I couldn't ignore the connection we had, and an answer on an online dating profile isn't a real answer or rejection. So I decided to just tell her and see where it went anyway. So we talked again the next day, and everything was great. Then I got super distant for a while, like half of a day. I needed to tell her since we were this close to planning our second date. I actually have the text messages from when I told her. The OP told a story about how he disclosed to a woman that he was a trans man. He said, "Damn, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you, but I was cleaning my shower. It was awful. But yes, we should. Before we go ahead making plans, I just wanted to tell you something. It's not a big deal to me, but I want to be open and honest with you. I'm a trans man." The woman replied, "That's legit. I appreciate you telling me. That's awesome that you're so chill about it. It's not something I would go actively searching for, but it's not a deal breaker either. I'm probably technically bisexual, though I've never acted on it." The OP then asked her out for the next day. She responded, "Where to? I'm up for whatever. I had Thai tonight though, so I would prefer not that." How long have you been on hormones? I'm assuming you must be. I don't know much about this whole thing. What kind of things do people normally ask? And that's basically how it went. I walked her through the bigger topics, she asked questions, I gave answers, and mostly we planned our second date. We saw a comedy show and had pizza. It was nice. She also slept over that night because we just didn't want to be done with the date, though clothes stayed on. Sex happened on date number 3, which was a mellow night at my apartment. That was also the night that I asked her to be my girlfriend. Basically, all of my transgender stuff was a non-issue for her. I think this has a lot to do with my honesty and openness and pretty much where I am in my life and transition. I think that if I was insecure with myself, then she would have reacted differently. I think our success together has a lot to do with our mutual timing. She was finally in a good place with her stuff, I was finally in a good place with my stuff, and it just worked. When she mentioned being bisexual, she was more so referencing being attracted to masculine people, regardless of genitalia. She has never dated women or been in a relationship with a woman. She's only ever treated me as a man, and I have never felt more comfortable in my role in a relationship. We're still dating. It's been 2 months, 2 of the most amazing months. Not only is all of the emotional and sweet stuff fantastic, but the sex is amazing. We recently incorporated a prosthetic for me, red, strap-on, and it's given a whole new and exciting dynamic to sexy time. So yeah, that's been my exploits for the last 9 months. I'm up for answering questions, in comments or private messages, so feel free. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.